Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with.
I'm Ted.
And today we are going to talk about how do you roll ability scores.
If you want to jump down to the description below, you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter. It's a great way to get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So, way back when, we did a video with Nate the Nerdarch on ability scores. More recently, I watched a video by WebDM on ability scores and some of their thoughts. And over the years, we've had a lot of different interpretations and thoughts about
methodologies
about doing ability scores in games like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons.
Indeed.
But now we've been playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for like 2 years now.
Indeed.
So I feel like we've changed some of our opinions and how we like to operate when it comes to ability stats as a group.
For starters, I think as players we have grown beyond the need for absolute mechanical advantage on every little thing for every single character that we create. And to those who absolutely want to have those high stats and whatever, if that's your method of play, great. I have no problems with it. Me as a player, I don't feel that I need to have all of those things anymore. So I think that just the standard set of attributes, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8, that, all right, that covers it. You get, a 15 that if you put it in a prime stat for your race, you wind up with a 17 that gets you pretty darn close to the tops for the game. It gives you an 8, so you automatically have a built-in weakness for your character in some way, shape, or form. And it gives you a building crutch, if you will, to be able to, well, why does that character have a flaw? What does it work for? So when I made my cleric for your game, it's like, all right, well, he's fat and studious, so he's not very strong. So, all right, that gives him an 8 in strength. Great, done. When I made a paladin for an upcoming game, I put it in his dex because he's got a couple crippling injuries, so he's not as dexterous as he really should be, and he's going to counterbalance that by slapping on some heavy armor. And, all right, well, he's going to suffer that -1 to initiative and -1 to armor class. Oh well.
Now, I've done that kind of thing before as well. And I find that playing my current character, Uthangar, I really struggled with, the low charisma because I found that I kept outplaying my charisma.
Mm-hmm.
And I find mental stats are hard to downplay. They're hard to outplay, they're hard to downplay. Mental stats are just harder to play than others.
I would absolutely agree with that. And, again, jump in the time portal, go way back. I wound up having a character in a game that you ran where I was playing an orc fighter, and I, as a role player, am naturally fall into a talker leadership position, and the stats I rolled, I had junk for mentals. I was playing an orc, so they automatically get negatives. I think I had like a 9, 7, 6 or something along those lines for my stats, and yet every time we got into a role-playing situation, Ted was shoved to the front. So how do I role-play a 6 charisma?
As the case may be.
So how do you roleplay a 6 charisma? Well, I've had more experience now, so I'm going to purposefully say the wrong thing and do things that are going to be insulting, and the party's going to have to learn, well, don't let him in front step up and do the talking, because otherwise Ted's going to screw things up.
Now, with a dump stat of 8, you're only slightly below average, so it's not as bad. So, like, one of the things I've done is just kind of like been extra dwarfy at times, especially with people that expect it, so almost like throwing it in their face.
And it took a while for you to build a relationship with one of the NPCs, and he was naturally predispositioned against you. So those two things were a barrier, and you slowly worked it down.
Right, and then the other thing is, like, with that particular character, because I didn't want to keep having to play down charisma. Whenever you offered boons, I've kind of finagled to put them in my charisma, which is not beneficial to my character at all. But it made me feel better about my role playing.
Right.
So we pretty much as a group just have kind of done away with rolling stats now. We either point by or the standard array. I really like the point by because it offers a lot of flexibility.
You can go that route. I get terrified of that seeing what those detrimental stats when you have those 8s, what it can do. But you're tempted to be like, oh well, I'm going to go with the highs and lows. I'll take 3 15s and 3 8s. Well, with as versatile as with 5th edition, with the saving throws, if you're not getting a proficiency modifier and you have a dump stat there, you're more than likely going to fail those saving throws the later you get in the game, because you're not proficient and you suffer a negative. Well, you got a 25% chance or less of passing those saving throws late in the game.
Yeah, moderate saving throws just became difficult. Like, I used an Umbra Hawk, which is a charisma saving throw, and I think it was like a 16 or a 15. I think it was a 16. And for the most part, most of you had made the saving throw. But you guys actually had either modifiers or you're proficient. You know, the only one person actually failed a saving throw, which was the warrior, the fighter, which it wasn't a big deal because he died that round. Went unconscious. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Right.
But if you think about it, had he not gone unconscious and with a bad roll, he does a lot of damage.
He could easily cut party members down without a lot of problem.
Yes, and he has the ability to cleave.
Yes.
So now, it could be ugly.
Like in 3rd edition, for those of you who played that, you had Fort Reflex and Will, and everything was tied to that. They used that same kind of moniker in 4th edition, and you could choose your better of the two. Like each saving throw was tied to 2 different stats, and you got to pick which one it was. Whereas in 5th edition, you have a save for all of them, and there's times that it can all be pulled in there. Charisma, there's not a lot of them. Intelligence, there's not a lot of them. But the rest of those saving throws, they definitely can come in pretty often, but they're all there. So there is no time where it's like, all right, I just don't have to worry about it.
So. Well, and the other thing is when you're saying, hey, I just dumped 3 of my stats, that's 50% of the saving throws. Even if charisma and intelligence don't come up that often, wisdom is more common, and when you combine it with the other 2, then there's a good possibility that you're making a saving throw based off of something you have a negative in.
Yep.
And for instance, I know Cleric of Chaos, one of our commenters, always says, "Oh, it's easy. Take 3 15s, 3 8s, be a barbarian." That's how you make your character. The downside to that is when the DM uses that against you, and it's not even vindictive. It's just that's your weakness. Eventually, some monsters are going to use those.
Right, and now the DM at some point in time, they're forced to use things against your character. And if you're going to exploit the system and take that route, all right, I'm a barbarian and all of my mentals suck. You're not proficient in any of them. You've got negatives in all of them. How many different adversaries in that monster manual are going to be geared towards shutting down your character?
Yeah, without you doing anything as a DM, I think the lowest saving throws I've seen are like 10 or 11.
I don't even remember seeing 10s. I've seen 11s through 13s, and they're fairly common. But even still, an 11 is still a 12 or better for that character.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What is that? Like a 60% chance you're going to fail that saving throw?
Yep.
And that's an
easy save.
And that's an easy save. But I feel like the monsters that use those saving throws, they're not that low either. They're a low one would probably be a 12 or a 13. So now you're pushing 13, 14.
Now you're at 70.
Yeah, so
it's like, ugh.
Yeah, you've just given yourself a noose to hang yourself with. We were talking about the different variations though you can do with the point buy, and that is the extreme one. I actually kind of like the ones where you're going with 14s and 12s.
So if you're looking for 14s, you can get 3 14s. That's 21 of your 27 points. And then you have some options as to where you want to go. That leaves you with 6 points. You could do 3 14s and 3 10s. Now you're at no negatives.
Yes.
And the difference between the 14s and the 15s, well, all right, you're not you're not ripe to get the 16s, 2 16s as soon as you hit 4th level, but you can get 1, but you're not suffering those negatives.
Well, not only that, though, we haven't even factored in racial adjustments.
Right.
You're still going to get at least a +1 and a +2.
That's true.
Unless you use one of the wonky ones in Unearthed Arcana that give you +1s.
Right.
For the most part. And you can further adjust that accordingly to up your stats a little bit more. So I really like those average ones, or even using the array. I kind of like when we do unorthodox builds, like, you know, and you're going, oh, well, I'm going to play a Dragonborn whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you dump strength. Well, now you're a really weak Dragonborn with a 10 strength.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of like those kind of builds. Same thing, you know, with any of them.
I prefer those type of characters because you're playing something that's just that's not the norm. And when you're playing something that's not the norm, it adds so many more role-playing opportunities, in my opinion.
Or, you know, like, or what about, you know, the Mountain Dwarf Bard, right? You dump strength, it doesn't affect his ability to wear armor because, you know, he's a Mountain Dwarf.
Right.
And you know, you get a decent con. You're not going to have a great charisma, but so what? Yeah, so
you could still put your 14 in charisma, 15 in charisma, and all right, you're not ideal, but you're still looking at a +2 modifier. We've got a bard in your game who started off with a 10 or 11 in charisma.
Yeah, he's like worked his way up to a 12 or 14 after 10 levels.
So like, you don't have to use prime stats. It's not built into the game that you have to. The lower number spectrum of 5th edition really doesn't force you to make those choices. If you're playing a game like 3.5 or Pathfinder, where you have numbers that are built in that you have to go for those things because 30s and 50s are DCs that you're going to have to tackle over the course of the game. And once you get into epic levels, there's literally DCs that are 80s and 120s. Like,
well, yeah, how many times in you know 3.5 have you made a character that could make a skill check, you know, almost routinely of 20 at first level? Like, it takes a little bit of work, but it's so doable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where in 5th edition a 20 is 2/3 of the way to impossible.
Now, there is builds that can make those things ridiculous. I played a character who got a passive perception of 30. He sees the invisible practically all the time. Now, that takes a lot of work. Well, maybe not a lot of work, but it takes certain criteria to make happen. You need a feat, you need a high wisdom score, you need expertise, and you need to get to those high levels to make it happen. But that is a specific situation that requires 4 and 5 abilities focused on wisdom and that skill and whatever have you.
Well, not only that too, like, that's a trade-off because that is a combat-oriented character, and you're dumping a lot of resources into just being able to perceive things.
Yep.
So like
it comes with a lot of benefits, and the DM was like, all right, I'm just not even going to contend with Ted's character. I'm not putting traps. He just would know where they are, and like I played it as
rookie DM. That's when you just push them into the traps.
Well, yes, it was her first time DMing, and it was a situation where it's like, I asked, I'm like, look, do you want me to not do this? Do you want me to play a different character? And she's like, no, it's fine. I like players testing my abilities. And she did wind up finding things that was like, well, it's out of range or what have you, so it's still able to surprise you and whatnot. So she learned from that experience.
Well, not only that too, like in 5th edition, for this instance, in 5th edition, dim light increases the difficulty by 5. I mean, you had a 30, so it's pretty hot. But if
well, it was
not
30 at the end of the game. But I mean,
yeah.
I started with, I think, like a 24.
Dim light and not slowing down adds 10 to the DC. You know, so it can ratchet it up. Then in 5th edition, there's plenty of monsters just go, oh no, it looks like this thing, and you can't discern it.
Correct.
No matter what you do.
Animated armor, right off the top of my head.
Yeah, cloakers, mimics, gargoyles. There's a bunch of stuff. Did they put piercers back? I think they did.
I think piercers are in there.
Yeah. So, like, you know, all these different monsters, you know, you just can't tell them. Galoob? How do you say that? I don't know.
No.
They look like boulders. You can't tell.
But I think we've gone away from the whole concept of ability scores.
Probably. When don't we not?
So, all right, do we want to touch on the pros and cons of rolling?
Not even. Like, I'm not even interested in the randomness anymore. I like the party kind of being on the same level. I notice some people don't care about party balance, but in this edition, it's so big. Like, you have a character that comes in starting with a 20, and the best anyone else can do is a 16. Mm-hmm. So the problem, what happens is like the threats are so much easier for that character, and the rest of the part. And if you ratchet up the difficulty for that character,
you have the chance of doing damage to the others that they can't contend with.
Exactly.
And I've seen that when I've run my games with the fans. I've told, like, individually some players, oh, we're using the stat array or the point buy, and other people's just wind up rolling. So they come in with these characters like, oh yeah, I've got 20 strength, or I've got this 20 this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, how did you have that happen on a 4th level character? And it's like, all right, well, I'm not going to stop the game and say go alter your stats, because it's a one-shotter. But I did see those type of characters outshine the other players even in a 3-hour session.
Now, that being said, in my game, I did allow a player to roll stats. Mm-hmm. And Victus Bloodfang has like a 22 strength or 24 strength.
Yeah, he has a 22.
Because I also granted boons throughout the game that allowed people to increase their maxes. Which, I mean, so he started off, I think, with an 18.
He did.
In his prime stat. So I don't think...
So as soon as we hit 4th level, he jumped out to 20, and very shortly thereafter, you gave a boon and allowed it to go above that.
Yeah.
So he went to 22. At 10th level, I've taken more feats to diversify my character, and I missed out on one boon, and that is what it is. But like, my highest stat in anything is 16. Now I have 2 16s, but I also still have an 8. I still have a 10. I haven't taken more than like a single stat bump, because it's not what my character is interested in.
Yeah, so in that game, like, that character, it doesn't break anything, and it wasn't too bad in this instance. One, because he didn't start with a 20 at first level. Mm-hmm. It's only I think like the 1 point is better, but it's not like the second point does make a huge difference in this edition. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, you're like, well, what's the difference between 1 and 2?
5%. If you're constantly performing.
Well, it would be 10%, right? Because of 2 points.
Okay. Well, I mean, the modifier is what I'm looking at. So the difference between a +4 and a +5, I mean, you're looking at that 5 to 10% consistently performing above. It means you're going to hit that much more often. You're going to do more damage every single time that you hit. So it's constantly that ratchet. Now,
at higher levels, it's not as big a deal. And not only that, though, so in my campaign, he draws a lot of aggro. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, 1, because of the way his character is played and he fights, and 2, because, he is monstrous looking. And he's chosen to adorn himself with his dead foes for the most part.
Right.
So when creatures see him, they're like, oh, we need to squash that first.
And I don't think he's ever had any problem with that mentality. The Gobelos in your game, they kind of do just as much damage as he does.
Sometimes more, I think. I think they do more.
Depending. I mean, with him...
They end up getting more attacks a lot of times.
Right. With him putting that gem in there, he's swinging that sword at 5d6 per attack. I think he's fairly close to getting that 3rd attack, or is that not till 15th?
Oh, he is close. I think it is 11th.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Now he's starting to outstrip them.
So he's gonna get there quickly, and at more damage per swing. You can only sneak once around. Anthony is limited on the number of superiority dice that he can throw, whereas
and their hunter's marks.
True, and whatever have you, but he can always consistently swing. And I mean, and he's not even doing the the most that he could be doing, because he has the ability to re-roll those ones. He has Savage Attacker, which allows him to roll 2 dice pools and pull the highest. But because it's so much dice, I think he just
doesn't worry about it a lot of times
because it slows down the combat.
Yeah.
And unless you like, all right, I'm gonna pre-roll, it slows down the game and kind of messes up the fun for everyone else. So yeah, if he would consistently being able to keep putting those bonuses in strength, I think it would be a serious problem. But the fact that the game does cap out at 20, it's not as bad. So
at the mid to high levels, but at the low levels, it makes a big difference.
It does.
Coming in with a player that's got 16 versus 20, huge difference. The 18, mildly so, but not as big a deal.
Right.
And this was when we first started playing 5th edition as well. So now I think I would pretty much always want to do point buy or just use the stat array. And as a player too. Plus, I suck at rolling dice. Dice hate me.
There is sometimes that desire to, well, I want to just see, but I have found that on average, I actually did because I like rolling dice. I actually once decided, all right, I'm going to roll 10 sets and just see what that looks like versus the stat array. And if you add up, the total modifiers for everything and just see, like, all right, so you've got, a 15 is a 2, a 14 is a 2, a 13 and a 12 are 1, so that's 2, 4, 6, and your 10 is a 0, your 8 is a -1, so your standard array gets you a +5. So if you roll, all right, how many times over the course of 10 rolls are you going to roll a total modifier that's better than a 5? I think I did it once or twice.
10 sets.
Out of 10 sets.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's a 20% chance that you're going to roll better. Now, you can factor this out, how many times, however many you want. And if you're like me and you want to roll dice, go ahead and actually see it. And you might be better rolling than I am. The dice you might use might be better or weighted differently. Who knows? But for me, I was just like, all right, I just don't think that the stats are as important to the game, especially with 5th edition, as they used to be. You're capped at 20. If you really care about your stats, you've got numerous chances to raise those throughout the game. Take your 14s, put a +2 in it, and all it's going to take is 2 bumps over the course of 4 or 5 or 6 if you're a fighter to get to 20. No big deal.
Yeah, and I kind of like the fact that you can build the character you want to build, right? If you use the array or if we're using the point buy, and I really like the idea of when you use the point buy, of basically maybe you don't have any 15s, but you don't have any 8s either. Yeah, I like that. I like that my lowest stat is average or slightly above average. And as we just looked at the stats, you can make them all above average and a little bit better than above average with 14s.
You can do 3 14s, 3 10s. So you're at average or above, and you could do 5 13s if you really wanted to, and not have a negative. I think it's 5 13s and a 10. So that puts you, you're not great at everything, but you're above average on almost everything. So
if you play a half elf, that's 2 14s and a 12 even. Like if you really just wanted to be like, all right, I'm just going to be overall decent.
That's actually a fantastic concept.
Or if you play just a human, that's straight 14s except for your lowly 11 if you go with the non-variant.
If you forego the feat, you can have straight 14s. Wow. That's 14s and an 11.
Yeah.
So you have one thing that's not well above average.
Yes.
That's a build worth knowing out there, guys.
Well, if you're interested in that thing, overall in the game, it's not really going to make you any better. But from a role-playing standpoint, you are essentially exceptional in almost everything.
If you make that as a bard, especially with Jack of all trades,
you're just going to be good at everything.
You're just going to be good at everything. Wow.
So there's an idea for you guys. You heard it here first. Probably not. But anyway, how are you guys rolling your stats? Point by array. What do you, or are you dropping the dice? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can support us over on Patreon.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.